Saturday night. Now it is being played at noon, and in deference to Hurricane Florence. Excuse me, getting some little phone activity here. And, I suppose that was the prudent play. I'm a little bit skeptical about Georgia having to do that. I mean, I think at worst here we were looking at some rain and wind, which last time I checked is not necessarily impossible to deal with when it comes to football. I understand definitely the travel and such on the games, on the fans getting back and forth to the game, and I certainly understand that. Georgia has a lot of people who come to their games from South Georgia, from Southeast Georgia, from Savannah, not to mention one particular dog that makes that trip every week and makes the trip back, Q, otherwise known as Ugga 10, and the Sauer family. I know there's a lot of people that make that trip up there, and, we can't ever be sure exactly what the weather is going to do, and certainly past concerns with weather, past experiences with weather like this have us as a population generally being much more cautious, and that's generally a smart thing. Georgia's not the only team making changes as a result of this. I'm sure you've probably read that South Carolina canceled their game against Marshall, so they're going to have to deal with playing that game later. Clemson and Georgia Southern have done like Georgia has at games at Clemson, South Carolina. Of course, they've moved their game up to noon, and so Georgia, Middle Tennessee State will be at noon on Saturday. I don't feel particularly bad about that. You'll probably find it as no surprise as I try to dial up your comments here and hear what you guys have to say about this. Hello, Rhonda and Dean Smith. Appreciate y'all being here. Jason Rush, Christy Kata Long. Can't wait to see you Saturday either. Hova, Montana. It's a go ball in Kingsland, Georgia. Yeah, I mean, areas like that certainly much more of a concern than Athens, Georgia. Georgia's obviously taken basically 100,000 people into consideration when they make a change like this. Hello, Al Dixon. Good to see you, buddy. Kevin Nunley's on here, y'all, from Knoxville, Tennessee, one of Georgia's biggest fans right there, right in the heart of Tennessee country. So, anyway, the game's going to be at noon, and we'll all get done a lot earlier. Of course, for me, that means waking up and basically going straight to the stadium. Your coverage, brought to you by Dog Nation of a Georgia football game, generally starts 3 or 4 hours before the game. So I'll have to get up there early and bring you your pregame blog, setting the scene, and we'll do that as always. And the good news is we'll be out there earlier. Maybe I'll be able to watch a few of these other games across the nation. And while we're at it, let's talk about Marco's Pizza, which sponsors this show. Right now, you can intercept a great deal on Marco's Pizza. Enjoy 2 medium, 2-topping pizzas at a great everyday value of $6.99 each. That's always the deal. You always can get that from Marco's Pizza when you mention Dog Nation on there, and we thank them for doing that. Jason Rush looking for a shout-out. What do you say, Jason? Shout-out. So what to talk about? The game's moved to noon from 7:15. How does that change things? Not at all from Georgia's perspective. I certainly appreciate Middle Tennessee State and Coach Rick Stockstill and all that they bring to the table. They are, by the way, an FBS opponent. They play in Conference USA. They're 1-1. They lost to Vanderbilt in Nashville to open the season, and then had a pretty good game last week. They have a really good quarterback, the coach's son, by the name of Brent Stockstill. He has 6 touchdowns and 1 interception on the season, thrown for nearly 600 yards. They throw the ball all over the place, so it's some more of that pass-oriented spread option that we see so much of this year. And I think that's one of the great things about how Georgia's schedule is set up. You've got you're coming off the South Carolina game where they throw the ball a lot out of the spread. You're going into Middle Tennessee State where they throw the ball a little differently. a lot out of the spread, and then you're going to Missouri after that, where Drew Lock will throw the ball a lot out of the spread. So if nothing else, by the time Georgia gets to Columbia, Missouri, I think they will be well-versed in defending the spread. Georgia struggled a little bit in that first half. Let's not forget that. Certainly a great win, 41-17 over South Carolina, gave up a late nothing touchdown, but otherwise struggled a little bit in the first half. We're up 17-10 before Rodrigo Blankenship's nice 45-yard field goal right before halftime. Gave him a little breathing room, and then Georgia comes out and scores three straight times with 2 3-and-outs in between to put that game away. Mike Mizell wants to know if there's any other surprising news. No, I'm getting lit up pretty good on Twitter by the Missouri crowd. So Jeff Sentell likes to do these cover 4 things. It's a nice little feature that he developed that runs on Dog Nation every week, where he asks everybody a question. And the question that ran this week, I believe it was what game that are Georgia fans not looking at that you see could be a problem, and why. And I mentioned the Missouri game. And now we did these. Keep in mind, we did these in the preseason before the season started, and we're supposed to just give a one sentence answer as to why. So I said Missouri game because I do see that as it should be a scary game for Georgia because of a lot of factors. But in order to encapsulate it into one sentence, and I said it was because it's a crappy trip to a crappy stadium. So I probably shouldn't have been quite as flippant about that, because that's now out on social media, and Missouri fans are lighting me up, saying it was unprofessional to call it crappy, and that, saying a lot of stuff, actually, they misreading it about the town of Columbia, that Columbia is a great town. It actually is. I love the town of Columbia, Missouri. I actually like it probably better than Columbia, South Carolina, and the Missouri campus is great. I mean, it's a cool little town. What I'm referring to is it's a very difficult place to get to. Excuse me. I still, it's still hard for me to get past Missouri even being in the Southeastern Conference. I realize regionality doesn't have much to do with it anymore, but when I said crappy state, it's really not a crappy state. A better description would probably be a charming stadium, or quaint. I mean, it's small, and so the atmosphere there is not really what you're used to encountering in the SEC. So do me a favor, go on Twitter and respond to the Missouri people and tell them that Georgia and Chip Towers likes the town just fine. But it is, and it's not that difficult of a trip. They're right. That's what a couple of people are saying. For the team, they're going to, fly into Columbia, Missouri directly on a charter flight, and it's not that trouble. But those of us who have to go commercially, you really can't afford to fly directly into Columbia unless you want to spend $1,000 a piece for your ticket. So you fly into St. Louis, Kansas City, drive 2 hours to get into the campus, and so that's what I meant by that. But anyway, I know people enjoy chewing on me, and so I'm getting chewed on pretty good by the Missouri people today, and that's fine. Speaking of Missouri, I did want to touch on a little bit of basketball real fast. We're getting close. I was pleasantly surprised to show up in South Carolina press box and see new Georgia basketball coach Tom Crean there. He had come in the previous night for a donor get-together there in Columbia, and he's such a nice man. He's so approachable. We'll see how good of a coach he is soon enough, but he's certainly a great promoter for Georgia basketball, and a great spokesperson for Georgia basketball, certainly. And he reminded me, and I'm reminding you that Stag Mania takes place on Friday night, October 5th, around 7:30 in the old Stegosaurus Stegman Coliseum, which is a perfectly fine venue, y'all. If you haven't been there in a long time, you need to check it out. It's really set up well. And what I thought was that the Crean's message about the game day experience for Georgia basketball was most intriguing to me, just in our conversation in the press box on Saturday. And at other times I talked to him, he is really trying to tinker with the game day environment with Georgia basketball. And I frankly feel like he's right in that it needs to be tweaked a little bit. Now, he is careful to be respectful to all of Georgia's basketball traditions and that kind of stuff, but he's just trying to make it a little bit more fun of an atmosphere, particularly after timeouts and things like that. You know, trying to make the environment a little bit more fun and exciting for Georgia fans. And of course, you know, the product on the field will have a lot to do with that. On the court, will have a lot to do with that. So put it in your phones, put it in your calendar. Friday, October 5th, Georgia will be having the Stag Mania, which is you know, sort of like Midnight Madness before. They're not waiting to midnight to do it. This is the official kickoff of the practice season and the basketball schedule. That's the night before the Vanderbilt game. Hello, Ken Blankenship. Your little brother's doing pretty good, buddy. So be sure and put that on your calendar. Try to show up if you can. They're going to put on the show. You know, they'll have a little bit of scrimmage, probably some slam dunk contests. I guarantee you Tom Crean will grab a microphone and talk to you, and that's always an exciting endeavor whenever he does that. Let's get to your questions pretty quick. I've got some more things to tell you here a little bit. Rick Martin points out the best game day experience for UJ basketball is winning. That's what you're going to see, yeah, absolutely. You know, Mark Fox did a pretty good job of putting a good product on the court and at home in particular. But yeah, I think that's definitely the truth. Just win, baby, right? Is what they say. Philip Jordan Wells said Chip fed them rat poison. Yeah, I told somebody on Twitter somewhere, I said I'm honored to be on Missouri's bulletin board, if that's the case. And look, I no doubt believe that Missouri will give Georgia a fight every time Georgia's gone out there, with the exception of the 34-0 in 2014 year. And actually, if you think about it, I believe Missouri actually won the SEC East that year, but that was when the Todd Gurley controversy developed. That whole situation happened. Nick Chubb gets his first start and goes for 144 yards against Missouri in a 34-0 win. Georgia's handled him pretty good. Ken Blankenship, now he lives in Arizona, says that game is at 9 a.m. now for him, so he's not real fired up about the game change. Let me hear from you on Facebook, and I'll respond to your comments about what you think about the change. How does this affect you coming into town at noon rather than at 7:15? I'm glad, obviously, because I'll get home a lot earlier. I'm sure people who come from South Georgia are particularly happy because you come to a 7:15 game, and let's face it, you know, a lot of them probably weren't going to show up for that game at 7:15. Maybe some of them will come now as a result of it. Mike Mizell, as always, wondering about McBride. He's fast as lightning. Why doesn't he play more? You know, I always say this when it comes to playing time. Same thing on the Justin Fields equation, which has come up a lot. Guys, coaches do not have agendas on this level, particularly Power 5, when you're pursuing a national championship. The best players play. And why Nate McBride is not in what's generally a four-man rotation at inside linebacker is nothing more complicated than he's not among the top four for whatever reason. He's definitely fast. He plays a lot of special teams. It's not easy to make that transition. And you know, I know Channing Tindall and Quay Walker, they're really infatuated with. They like the way those kids learn, look. They just need to learn to play the position, which is very, very difficult to transition from high school to college. In particular, the inside position, whether it be line or linebacker, is very, very difficult. Travis Foskey is on there saying he accidentally bought the MTSU ticket at the Austin Peay game and wasn't able to go, but now he can. So there's a positive outcome. Hey, y'all, everybody, how about a salute to Darius Ford? I'm not sure what he's doing over there. He says he had to get up earlier to watch the dogs from Afghanistan. So, yeah, I imagine so. Blankenship wants to know, is Godwin 100%? Saw him catch one pass. I don't think he's 100%. Quite frankly, he did travel and obviously play, had a catch against South Carolina, and he's coming back. But, man, I tell you what, Ken, this is the deepest wide receiver core I've ever seen Georgia have in all my years of covering the team. They traveled 10 to South Carolina. I think normally Georgia travels 6 to 8 wide receivers. The fact that they took 10 tells you how deep they are at that position. Obviously, a lot of guys are going to contribute on special teams, or else you don't get on the bus. Jamie Kennedy, or Kennedy, I don't know how it's pronounced, so I apologize, Jamie, wants to know, how do I compare the depth of the team this year to the last 10 or 15 years? Yeah, I would say it's probably the deepest team I've ever seen. Georgia in 2008 was pretty deep. 2004, 2005 was pretty deep. The 2012 team was obviously good, but I wouldn't say it was as deep as this one is. It really, really is incredible. Jason Rush says he used to worry about noon games, but he believes that Kirby keeps him focused. It'll be a little more sleepy at noon. The key on a game like this, I think, is just the talent differential. I would imagine it'll go like most of these games go, that Middle Tennessee State will be supremely motivated and really fired up in the early going, and probably hang with Georgia for a couple of series. But eventually Georgia's depth will take over, and they'll be able to run them out of there pretty good. I certainly hope that's what the case is. I think you'll see a lot of players play that, a lot of us haven't seen, but generally Georgia is still trying to figure out who can play and who can't. Obviously, the red shirts will start coming into play once we get a little bit later, and because of the red shirt rule, you can get these guys out here. But I definitely think, it'll be I think Georgia, the line is 32.5 now, last I checked. I don't know whether Georgia will cover that. That's really not Kirby's thing. He's not a run-up, score kind of guy. I don't think you'll see him throwing a lot late, but I do think you'll see a lot of personnel because it's in Georgia's best interest to do that. I don't for a second think that Andrew Thomas will play. Kirby's still saying that that's a possibility, but I don't know why you would even consider it with an opponent like this, and certainly as good as Cade Mays is playing. Speaking of which, coming up later on Dog Nation, I will be posting my Tower State column today. I'm writing about Mike Bobo. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see what he did this past weekend, but his team came from behind to beat Arkansas after trailing 27-9. Actually, Mike Bobo has 2 straight SEC games. They beat Arkansas right there in Fort Collins, and now they're traveling to Florida this week to take on the Florida Gators. And, wouldn't that be incredible if Mike Bobo could go 2-0 against the SEC? But, the thing about Mike Bobo, if you hadn't kept up with it, he's dealing with a pretty significant illness that hospitalized him for 10 days right in the middle of the preseason. He's had a tough time, lost 2 tough games coming out of the chute, so they were 0-2 playing host to Arkansas. And I think most of the people here are probably like me in that you root for Mike Bobo. Comes from a great family. Laney and the kids. He's got triplets and another child, so he has 4 kids, and they're growing up there. And so I'll bring you an update on him. Yes, I got some questions here if they figured out what's wrong. They do know what's up with Mike now, and it's a complicated situation. But if you saw him hobbling around out there Saturday night, your heart felt for him. I mean, he's hurting, and he's playing through the pain. And Kirby Smart, I asked him about him at his post-practice briefing on Tuesday, and he said there's nothing tougher than a Bobo. they remain really close friends. Mike validated that. You know, they stay in touch all the time. They don't talk football as much as they do just life, and obviously they've been talking about that a lot lately. And as you'll find, it's no surprise, as a Georgia native, a Georgia alum, a former Georgia coach, Mike is rooting for the Bulldogs, and he's keeping close tabs on his team as much as he can, tries to watch them as often as he can, which he actually gets a chance to a lot, being on Mountain Time out there in Fort Collins. So everybody extend your good wishes and prayers to Mike Bobo. He's fighting through a difficult situation. He's going to be okay in the long run, and check out, come back to Dog Nation and read about that a little later. A lot of stuff up there from Mike Griffith and me on Dog Nation right now. You know, it may be Middle Tennessee State, but we're like Kirby and the Bulldogs. We don't treat this game any differently than we would any other game. Your coverage is going to continue to be intense, and that's regardless if the game starts at noon or 7:15. We'll be bringing you a whole lot of stuff. So hit me with your questions. We got a little bit of time left here. Not a whole lot. This is the new time for the Towers Take Live, brought to you by Marco's Pizza. We're going to be at 12:30 every week, so I appreciate the chance to share some lunch with you, and it'd be really cool if y'all could join me in ordering a Marco's Pizza for that lunch. You know, you can intercept a great deal from Marco's Pizza right now, as you can every week. When you mention Dog Nation, $6.99 each for two-topping medium pizzas, and those pizzas are to die for, guys. Hello, Primo. Get your pizza from Marco's Pizza. Let me see a couple of questions here. Yeah, you know, Nager Yang talks about there may be some strong winds. I mean, I would imagine all of the Southeast is going to encounter some winds. I haven't looked really to see really closely to see exactly what the weather is going to be Saturday at noon, but I don't anticipate a lot of problems. Jamie Kennedy asked, in your opinion, who do you think will be the best linebacker out of these new young guys? I think that's going to be Channing Tindall. I'm really impressed with that young man. Now, Quay Walker is an extremely good athlete and a really good linebacker, but he is so big, I'm not sure if he might not he can train himself out of the inside linebacker position. But if he does remain there, I see, you know, Quay Walker being, you know, the big thumper like Natrez Patrick is at the Mike linebacker, and then Channing Tindall being the will. The thing about Channing, he's bigger than Roquan Smith, but he's fast like that. Now, I'm not going to say he's as fast as Roquan Smith, but he was a 200 and 400-meter sprinter at Spring Valley High School there in Columbia, South Carolina, which has a great tradition. So he's like a bigger version of Monty Rice, maybe. And I think Monty Rice is a very good player. I think Georgia's linebackers are in good hands right now with the four-man rotation they have there between Juwan Taylor, Monty Rice, Natrez Patrick, and Tate Crowder. But I do think it's a bit deficient compared to last year's linebackers. And look, here's another thing we haven't talked all that much about, but, you know, Big John Atkins being out at the nose guard, I'm not blown away by Georgia's nose guard play right now. Just the fact that I've seen a lot of different players rotate in there. I mean, by design, Julian Rochester is supposed to be your guy in there, and, you know, maybe Devontae White. Jay Hayes has been playing a little bit at the nose guard. He's only an end and tackle type. I think you're getting really good play from Tyler Clark, and I think David Marshall is having an all-SEC caliber season, y'all, by what I can see between the tackle and end spot. But in there in the interior, I believe Georgia is a little bit deficient, especially with regard when you talk about the big-time teams in the league and out of the league. You know, I think with Georgia, you've got to look, you got to have a national perspective, and so I think from a national perspective, comparing to Clemson and Ohio State and Alabama and Auburn, I think Georgia has to prove that they're better than maybe I think, or the rest of the nation might think, on the interior defensive line. That becomes more and more critical as the competition goes up. Bradford Williams says moving this game to noon really messes us up coming from South Georgia. Yeah, I'm sure it does, Bradford. And, you know, that's the blessing and curse of a situation like this. It also gets you home earlier and maybe gives you safer travel coming home, because I think the weather is going to be later in arriving for that noon start. And certainly if you don't already have a hotel room on a Friday night, I doubt if there's probably any room at this point that they're going to go up. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a salute to Lily Hill is on here. This is Trey Hill's mother. Hello, Ms. Hill. It's been terrific watching your son, Trey. He is definitely doing a good job. See him working a lot at center right now. He's been working at number 2 backup center, so I imagine you would see him get a lot of snaps on Saturday in relief of Lamont Gilliard, and I would imagine he would be the first to go in if something were to happen to Lamont. Walker is hard to block. Scott Hyatt is talking about DeAndre Walker. Going back and watching that game on second, DeAndre Walker had a great game, better than I advertised. If I was picking a player of the game on defense, and I do this with a game ball, I was actually thinking Richard LeCount or possibly DeAndre Baker out of that game, but DeAndre Walker played great. And one of the reasons he went out of the game was he actually was dehydrated, cramping, all that kind of stuff. It was not a concussed injury or anything like that. Jason Rush says it's good to see Crowder out there at linebacker. Yeah, he's a great story. We talked to Crowder earlier this week. I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to any kind of profile or anything on him. I know his parents are often on here and on Facebook, and they're proud of their son, and they should be. Really, really come a long way as a inside linebacker and still a major special teams contributor for Georgia. Let's see, Alan Coleman, I missed what he, the poor man's Todd Gurley, I'm not sure what he was referring to earlier. He says, can Devontae Wyatt still do a back handspring? I believe he can. He's a little bit heavier now. I'll have to challenge him and see if he can still do that. I think Wyatt is an excellent player, and he's going to help Georgia. A little bit smallish for Georgia's defensive line, and I think it's pretty clear at this point that Jordan Davis, the freshman from Charlotte, is probably a redshirt candidate. He hasn't played much, didn't travel to Columbia, South Carolina, which was a game I'm sure that he would have liked to have gone to, being from nearby in Charlotte. He's a terrific player. And just the biggest guy Georgia has on defense, I think, on their team, period. He's listed at 6'6", 340. He told me before he got to Georgia that Kirby wanted to get to 320. It doesn't look to me like he has. He's actually grown. He told me before he came over here he was 6'7". He's grown into 6'7", and that with his hair, he's 6'8". So you're talking about a 6'8", 345-pound defensive lineman. That's generally the problem with guys that are that big is playing low to the ground. Football is a game that has to be played low to the ground. You have to really get under people, and that's difficult for a guy that size. They're working on that, so I see it every day. Trey Scott really working hard with that guy. Scott Hyatt also points out that Hot Rod is the most dominant player in college football. I wouldn't argue with that. Love the story of Hot Rod. Love Rodrigo Blankenship, Mr. Rex Specs. And now it's no longer about his quirkiness or his personality or overcoming the walk-on status and becoming a scholarship player. Now it's about being a dominant weapon for Georgia. And right now he looks like the most dominant kicker in the country. I don't think it's a stretch right now to go ahead and put him at the top of the Lou Groza Award. And he was on the watch list to start with, but basically everybody is at the start of the season. And I would think he was by far the leader at this point. 15 for 15 on touchbacks, and and he's just a great person and a fun interview. He was great this past week. We will get this on Dog Nation eventually. We haven't written anything about it, but he's famous for his pink shoes, but he actually broke out some new ones at South Carolina, and he's calling them his silver bullets. So he has he calls them his pink slippers, and now he has his silver bullets, and he wasn't sure which ones he was going to go with going forward. The reason is they're special ordered type of soccer shoe that he uses. And besides the pink of that particular style, they only come in like leopard spots and other things like that. So that's the reason he's worn the pink shoes. But he found him some silver bullets now, and we'll see how that affects him going forward. He was also funny talking about he is 15-15 on the touchbacks, but he had one of them he got away with, sort of line drive bounce through the corner of the end zone, and he felt very, very fortunate to come through with that. And as Philip Jordan Wells talked about, he's also the most jacked kicker in the country too. Yeah, he's got the guns. He comes out there in off-season conditioning and makes a point to work out with the rest of the players. So, look, I don't know if you've met him in person, but he's every bit of 6'1" as he's listed, pushing 6'2". He might have grown into that since then, and he looks like he'd be a pretty good safety at this point. And the fact of the matter is he was a very good soccer player coming out of Sprayberry, Cobb County, and Walton High School before that. So he's a kid who can really, really get it done. Hello, Michael Morrow. Thanks for joining us. So we're getting at the end of the hour. If you have a question, get me now, because otherwise we're going to wrap it up for the time. Rod the Rapper, that's right. Jamie talked about he does have a rap song now. He has picked up the baton from Sony Michelle. What is it? Fly Guy Stacks 2, or whatever his handle was. Rod's got a rap out there that's pretty good. Anything else you want to get? I mean, I think that basically gets it. Remember to put Stag Mania in your phone on October 5th, the night before Vanderbilt, and come check out the basketball team. They're not a lot of great promise about the team this season. I don't know whether that's accurate or not. I saw they were picked kind of low in the SEC, but I think the Tom Crean era is going to be very exciting, and he's a neat guy. And in the meantime, Georgia has Middle Tennessee State coming up on Saturday at noon. Noon kick, changed from the 7:15 due to Hurricane Florence. And that game now, by the way, ESPN News will carry it. I think originally the game was slated. It was going to be on ESPN2. Now it's going to be on ESPN News. I believe Beth Mowins, Anthony Bach, and Rocky Boyman are still going to be your television crew. All of that will stay the same. Respect the specs, you're right. Alan Duff Durden says, Nick Lurch says thanks, enjoys my work, and I appreciate that. Timothy Cal Foster coming in from Lake City. Thanks, Mr. Foster, for hanging out with us for a little while. And thank you, as always, to Marco's Pizza. Y'all remember to intercept that deal, two medium, 2-topping pizzas for $6.99 from Marco's. Hello, Primo. Give them a call, or better yet, go to marcos.com, set you up a profile, and, man, you can just click your favorite pizza, and it'll be there in 30 minutes like nobody's business. Thanks again for your time. I'm going to sign off now. I've got some writing to do. I have a tower stake up later on Mike Bobo. Please click and read that, and thanks for reading everything we write and hanging out in these forums with us each and every day. So for everybody at Dog Nation, I'm Chip Towers signing off for now. See you on the website.